Welcome to freedom. Go to JuMashCasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. 7 million people gathered in more than 2,600 locations around the United States of America protesting no kings, no emperors, no Caesars, no tyrants, no some of everything. And everything that we've seen in the leadership of our president of the United or Disunited States of America. We've normally had presidents who worked a little bit harder at trying to keep the American people together, and we have a president who's heading in the absolutely opposite direction. Our very special guest in this hour is Antonio Modesto Milian. He's an TEDx speaker, social media strategist, a content creator, historian, and influencer. He's standing in today for our regular and favorite millennial. Anthony Modesto Milian is an independent fine art and photo artist, journalist, photographer based in upstate in South Carolina. Anthony is an inaugural fellow at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts and a grant recipient with the Chapman Cultural Center. Anthony's work can be seen in G's Magazine, the Greenville News, and Upstate Forever. Anthony is also a social media content creator with over 400,000 followers across 3 platforms. Anthony has done work for National Geographic, Project Pulso, Wondery, and Eat. I want to get this right. Luisa. Anthony, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're already a man after my own heart. I was born in Greenville, South Carolina on March 11th, 1965. And here you are in South Carolina, the Jim Clyburn state. So grateful that you're our guest today. Anthony, welcome forward to our show.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate you. And I actually live in your dad's, your birthplace and your dad's original hometown. So.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, no kidding. Well, next time I'm in town, I'm definitely going to make it a point to spend some time with you. You know, I spent a lot of time over there at where Sterling High School used to be.
Where it used to be, right. There's a lot of history there.
That's right. And I was looking at a really interesting post on social media the other day where they have these 2 students in downtown Greenville, South Carolina, actually celebrating Sterling High School and the idea that there was a time when Sterling obviously was a segregated school, but some of the best and finest Americans have been produced right there in that social, economic, and political climate of the former Jim Crow South. Anthony, I'm really glad you're here. Anthony, share with us first, before we begin, a little bit about your work.
Yeah, so I'm a content creator. I'm a historian by trade. Public historian is what I call myself. And essentially, I do mostly heritage-based work. So I'm of Puerto Rican descent. So I like to talk about Black history and Puerto Rican history, and as they relate to each other, both the intersectionality between African American and Puerto Rican history, and then also both of them independent of themselves as well. And my content is very niche, so there's only certain demographics that really relate to that. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Well, we're grateful for that, and we're grateful that you're on our show, which means we are going to have a global show for sure. Anthony, I have about 2 minutes before we come forward. Your initial thoughts on the 7 million people who gathered protesting No Kings this past weekend?
One word: amazing. Amazing. I was in my town, with at the No Kings protest, and there were so many people there. And I mean, people that came up to me and told me that they were conservative. They couldn't believe what was happening. They never thought, I'm talking about military personnel, teachers, lawyers, doctors, people that were like, yeah, I'm conservative, but this is too much for me. And if that's happening where I live in the South, I could imagine what's happening in other places like Chicago. I saw videos from Chicago, from Los Angeles, from Boston, from New York, and I'm very I'm a proud American, but this made me very proud to see people coming out and standing out and legitimately saying there are no kings in this country.
Mm.
And this is a country for everyone, not just some.
Anthony, we have about 30, maybe 45 seconds before we come forward, which means we're going to our break. So you'll hear me pulling us forward regularly. Your thoughts on whether or not you think the United States has reached a tipping point?
I think we're reaching a tipping point. I don't think it's affected enough people. The cuts and everything that's happening have affected enough people for a tipping point to have been reached. But people are surely getting upset. They're getting pissed off. And what we saw is 7 million. That's a lot of people.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour, we're live in Los Angeles, Antonio Modesto Milian. He's going to bring us a perspective from the South, from the nation, and from his work and art, and how important it is at this hour in our nation's history. More when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code MAJOR25 to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code MAJOR25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code MAJOR25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Our regular host, Ernest Kim III, is not with us today, but he has a man of great integrity, of history, of culture. Antonio Modesto Milian is our very special guest, sitting in for Ernest Krim in this hour. Before we dive into some of the historical perspectives between African Americans and Puerto Ricans and the intersectionality, I've never seen a leader's response to a national First Amendment protest quite like that of the President of the United States. He posted a meme flying, I believe, an F-15 fighter jet and dumping crap on the American people. Anthony, what does that say to you about the the moral authority of the President of the United States and where we are as a nation at this hour?
I mean, that's him, that's him. When you have hardworking people that are fed up with what he's doing and his foot soldiers are doing in this country, for him to be so dismissive as to make a meme, take the time to make AI generated memes dumping feces on people, we get a reminder of who he is as a person at the end of the day. That is 100% who he is. He has no regard for anyone but himself.
And in real time, that also means when they brought troops to Los Angeles, when they've sent troops to Washington, D.C., when they sent troops to the city of Chicago, and how he's treating immigrants and locking up Black people from one end of the nation to the other. The way in which he uses his so-called enemies list, his hit list with Eric Adams to see the mayor of New York kind of being dangled out here as someone's torn between the loyalty to the king and the criminal justice system itself. It's just insulting to me beyond measure that the American people in a voting booth returned this man to office, given the nature of the moral depravity that we are witnessing at this hour. I'm sure you're in absolute agreement with that.
100%. When he won that night, when he won, I couldn't believe it. I could not legitimately believe it. After everything, the trials, January 6th. January 6th should have been it. That should have been game over for his political career, everything. And America turned around and they put him back in office.
Shameful. And we all bear some responsibility. Well, I can't say it because I voted for Kamala, but there are people in this country that you met at the march in South Carolina, at the gathering in South Carolina, that clearly reflects their buyer's remorse for what they've done. And we are going to enter into a repentant, I believe, cycle at some point in time, because obviously we have 3 more years of this behavior. And I don't see how it gets any better. Let me get him off the screen for a minute and just talk about that with you for a second. No, let me get this off the screen entirely. Let's talk for a second about African Americans and Puerto Ricans. Share with us that deep and rich and important history.
So, I mean, from what I've studied and what I've seen, there's a lot of interconnectedness. Now people are more interested than ever because Bad Bunny has the Super Bowl performance coming up in February, and there's a lot of people, there's a lot of Black people, a lot of African American people that are ecstatic about it, and a lot of a journalist at CNN asked me, was it surprising to you? And it wasn't. Somebody who grew up in Brooklyn, New York, as somebody who grew up in the Northeast, we lived with each other. We saw each other. We hung out with each other. It wasn't any. There was no mystery behind it. We all celebrated each other. So, if you look at the history of Black and African American and Puerto Ricans in America, you'll see that there was a lot of struggle, a lot of interconnected struggle, especially when it came from the Great Migration, people moving from the South to the Northeast, and then Puerto Ricans moving from the island to New York. A lot of us lived alongside each other. And you'll see protests, especially in the Northeast, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, where we wanted the same things for our children. We wanted the same things for each other. We wanted good paying jobs. And so there's a ton of interconnectedness between African Americans and Puerto Ricans. And I'm just glad that I have the opportunity to share that.
Anthony, my father ran for president in 1984 and 1988. And after the 88 campaign, to continue his advocacy and his service, he decided to run for the title Shadow Senator for the District of Columbia. And the argument, of course, was that there are more people who live in the 10 square miles of the District of Columbia than live in like 9 at that time other states. That they were entitled not only to a congresswoman, Eleanor Holmes Norton in Washington, D.C., who could vote, they were entitled to 2 United States senators. They were entitled to a governor, maybe even also, well, of course, a small state legislature, a governor with a House and a House of Representatives, and their independence, not with the federal territories, but with the non-federal territories. And we measure statehood on the basis of people, not based on the size or shape of the states themselves. No state is the same. I also know that my father at that same time was advocating for Puerto Rican statehood. Share with us the governmental jurisdiction of the United States and some of the challenges that it is and that are all too apparent in Puerto Rico without the same resources that they're entitled to as a territory.
Yeah, I mean, it's a touchy subject because there's some people that believe Puerto Rico should be a state. There's some people that believe Puerto Rico should be independent. From what I've seen, it looks like the United States gets to reap the benefits of Puerto Rico being a quote unquote territory. But a lot of Puerto Ricans that live on the island don't get the same benefits. There's a ton of tax benefits if you are in the mainland United States and move to Puerto Rico that people on the island can't get. And I'm 100% in agreement with you. I believe that DC should be a state because land doesn't vote, people do. And when you see these maps and it shows huge swaths of land that are red or blue, you're reminded that it's not the land that votes, it's the people that live in that land that vote. So when it comes to DC being a state, I 100% in agreement. They deserve everything that any other state would get because they represent a huge swath of people. On a side note, one of my earliest pictures of my mom is with a picture of your dad. They were protesting in Brooklyn, New York, against apartheid.
Wow.
In the 1980s. My mom, I got to find the picture, and if I have the opportunity, I'll send it to you. But it's an old picture. They were protesting against apartheid in the 1980s. So, we've been a part of this struggle for a long time. My family has.
You certainly have been, and I'd love to have that picture and get it to me because I certainly want to show it to my father during this particular phase of his life where he needs pictures. He remembers and he reflects upon them. He doesn't say very much, but he certainly does that, and so I'm sure he'll be extremely grateful. Let me ask you about back to Puerto Rico. Now, if you had 2 senators and you had a congressman who could vote in the legislative branch of the federal government, they would be obviously well positioned to demand that the tax dollars that Puerto Ricans send to the mainland, that they are reciprocated in terms of roads, infrastructure, hurricane relief, FEMA, and disaster relief. But without those advocates in Washington, you're kind of a protectorate.
Right.
And their people are mostly us. They're Afro, I want to say Afro-Caribbeans. I don't want to misstate that, but that's the case, isn't it, Anthony?
There are some people that identify as Afro-Puerto Rican. I do. The majority of my family does as well. I think that if the situation was where Puerto Rico was a state or had equal representation in some way, shape, or form, the island, from what we've seen, would be in a better shape than what it currently is. And I honestly think that the ball is continuously kicked down the road per se because of the benefits that people get from moving there, that people on the island can enjoy, the tax benefits and the capital gains benefits and things like that.
The reason I wanted to raise this issue of DC statehood and possibly Puerto Rican statehood, whether we are in support of it one way or the other or not, is when you hear Donald Trump start saying that he wants to add Greenland as the 51st state, or he nudges Canada by saying join America, or he says to Mexico offensively, any of these countries offensively, you should join the United States. What he's really saying is you're entitled to 6 United States senators. Right. He's saying that the House of Representatives would change and obviously bring even more people into the Congress who do not look like us, do not share our history, will be advocating for their point of view in the very limited time that we have to fight for our points of view. And we find ourselves at this moment in large measure because of how he has stacked the courts. This past Wednesday, in a Supreme Court case called Robinson versus Calais out of Louisiana, the threat to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which, as you well know, was paid for with the Jimmy Lee Jackson and James Orange and the death of Jimmy Lee Jackson and Martin Luther King Jr. participating in his funeral with Abernathy and Andrew Young, as well as James Bevel, and then the Selma to Montgomery March. My father then leaves Chicago Theological Seminary. He sends my mother to Greenville, South Carolina. I'm born March 11th, 1965. It's the second march from Selma to Montgomery. He calls Greenville, South Carolina. He finds out that his firstborn son has been born. He wants to name me Selma. My mama says that ain't happening. You're gonna name him Jesse Jackson Jr. I'm giving you the history, at least of my life, to give you some reflection on, as we look at the state of Texas now, redrawing African American congressional districts, and the state of California joining in that, and other states now falling in line. There is grave concern, as we experienced in first Reconstruction, that we could lose a significant amount of our representation and voices in the Congress of the United States. I'm absolutely sure you've been observing that history.
100%. But you really, when I see what's happening, America has been trying to erase our voices for a long time. Right? The gutting of DEI, it basically says that we don't belong in any field in this country.
Not in a single field in this country.
Single field. If there is something that we can do, they want to find a white person that can do it better. If we are in that field, we're questioned if we're qualified. Affirmative action, the getting rid of affirmative action, which if you look at the history of affirmative action, the number one recipient of affirmative action were white women. They were white women. So America has been trying to erase our voices. But one thing I think is important is that we look to people like your father and we see how they survived during it. And we remember that they endured a lot worse than we could. But we have a lot more to lose we have a lot more visually to lose than they had. But we have the blueprint. People like your father gave us a blueprint on how to get through this. And I think it's important that we remember that.
You know, I'm grateful for that recognition, because I do spend a lot of time thinking about him during this time and during these periods. I spoke at an event last night, and I shared with Abby Phillip, who's written a new and very precious book, "The Fight for Black Political Power," by about Jesse Jackson. And I was sharing with them that in 1979, Ronald Reagan came to my father's office to meet with him because he had announced his campaign for president in 1979-80 in Philadelphia, Mississippi, where Swerner, Goodman, and Cheney were killed. And that was the signal was so strong that David Duke endorsed him on the same day. And when he came to my father's office, he sat down in the outer office with my Uncle Saint, who had a big afro and a big mustache. And he sat there talking to Uncle Saint for like 15 minutes. Hey, Reverend, listen, I think we should do this. I think we should do that. And after listening to him for about 15 minutes, because he looked a little bit like my dad, he said, "Hold on, Governor Reagan, let me share with Reverend Jackson what you want to talk about." So he goes to my dad's office and says, "Dad, this guy's out here talking about, Reverend, this guy's out here talking to me like I'm you." And my dad, essentially in that meeting and during that period, because the Voting Rights Act was coming up for renewal again in 1982, and Reagan had not indicated that he was going to sign its extension. And so Dad began registering people to vote in the South. The campaigns came from that, and it really, really changed the national discourse. We've got about a minute before we come forward, and it's a hard stop. Your thoughts on the engagement of young millennial African Americans right now?
I think they're doing their best. They know what's happening, and they're on social media talking about it. They're using every platform that they have to engage their audiences, to let them know what's happening. And I've seen people engage, and I've seen people that are apathetic, but they are millennials, Gen Z. We're doing the best that we have with the resources that we have.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. When we come forward, we have two more segments at the Hard 30. I'm going to let Anthony share with us where this generation is going and how he uses history to help this generation get there. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Anthony Milian when we come forward.
conversations. You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. The federal shutdown enters another week, now the third longest in U.S. history. Democrats want health care subsidies. Republicans demand a deal first. Your Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
This is the first time in history that any party has had the audacity to shut down the government over a totally clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution.
The Senate meets today for an 11th attempt to end the impasse. Good Morning America's Robin Roberts has donated a cutting-edge broadcast media center to Southeastern Louisiana University. The 33,000 square foot facility will help journalism students thrive and marks a historic moment for the school. And Cardi B is speaking out against the Trump administration's proposed $186 billion in SNAP cuts, warning it could hurt food pantries during the holidays. She's urging easier access to aid amid rising costs. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Escape the confines of the city for the expansive beauty of the Santa Ynez Valley with a short 2-hour drive up the coast. Let Chumash Casino Resort be your destination getaway. Welcome to freedom. Go to chumashcasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams reminded everybody that they are a legitimate contender in the NFC. They went over to London and delivered a 35-7 beatdown over Jacksonville Sunday morning. 5 touchdown passes for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, 3 to wide receiver Devontae Adams. The Rams are 5-2. They're in the first place tied with San Francisco in the NFC West. The Chargers forgot to bring their defense to SoFi Stadium. They lost to Indianapolis 34-24. The 4-3 Chargers gave up 401 yards in total offense. Colts running back Jonathan Taylor had 3 rushing touchdowns. The Dodgers still don't know who they're going to play in the World Series. Seattle and Toronto will meet up for a decisive Game 7 tonight in the American League Championship Series. Toronto won Game 6 last night 6-2. First pitch tonight at 5 o'clock on Fox Sports. The World Series starts on Friday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio that's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hi, I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., inviting you to join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, here on KBLA Talk 1580. As a law school graduate and a theologian with a firm grasp of our body politic given almost 2 decades in Congress, my show is the fresh new home of an authentic, uncompromised quest for transformation and salvation, both personal and collectively, as I vigorously interrogate the theological and symbolic meanings embedded in our society. I promise to leverage my knowledge of history, theology, and both international and domestic issues to imagine an inclusive vision for the future, which I hope will inspire all of us to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness as a given, not just an aspiration. So join me weekdays at 12 noon, right after Tavis Smiley, for 2 hours of the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in a National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4. Ad paid for by Yes on 50, the Election Rigging Response Act, Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee, Ad Committee's top funders, HMP for Prop 50, and Fund for Policy Reform.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest is Antonio Modesto Milian. Anthony is a TEDx speaker, social media strategist, content creator, historian, and influencer. And Modesto stands for modest because he asked me a few minutes ago, just offline, hey, how am I doing? You're being modest, bro. You are doing fantastic on our show. And I'm really enjoying our conversation. Hey, I was talking with our producer also during the break, and she was reminding me that here in Chicago, obviously, I know this, we have a large African and Latino population. It's also true in Los Angeles, where we're broadcasting live. And obviously, such a population exists in New York as well. 3 cities where there are 3 African-American mayors who are, quite frankly, living under the tyranny of the approach of the administration. I'm wondering how and what kind of conversation you're hearing from our Afro-Latino brothers and sisters, the Latino population generally, many of whom, and I'm not necessarily saying those who are Afro-Latino, voted for Donald Trump in the last election. Some of the demographics clearly reflect that they felt far more comfortable than voting for Donald Trump than they did, let's say, Kamala Harris.
Right. I've heard a lot of regret. I've known a couple of people that are of Mexican descent that voted for Donald Trump, and they didn't think that, they thought he was only coming after the criminals. But in the mind of someone like Donald Trump, the moment you cross that border, you're a criminal. It doesn't matter why you're crossing that border. You could be getting, thrown between the dryer and the washer in your home country and have to flee from that. The moment you cross that border, you're a criminal in their mind. And it's to the point where, that sort of person, they don't even think you deserve rights. The Constitution talks about personhood, not citizenship, personhood when it comes to basic rights. And they don't even think they deserve that. Due process is out the window. But from what I've seen a lot of regret and, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening. I didn't think he was going to do this to us. And then of course, I'm sure there are some people that don't have a problem, but I've seen regret.
I'm going to touch on some soft space here for both of us because, I think some people come to America ignoring the African-American experience, ignoring our history, ignoring the fact that we have been in a struggle for freedom, for emancipation, for our basic human rights. They come to the United States inheriting rights that they've never marched for. They've never faced what we've faced. And now some of our Latino and Latina brothers and sisters are experiencing exactly what our ancestors and some of us in the present are experiencing. Is there any change in their disposition that could move the needle in future elections where they might say, you know what, I've had enough of this. I got to dap my brother up on this right here and rejoin the cause or join the cause. How about that?
Right. Well, first and foremost, I'm a Black man. So, from what I've seen when it comes to, what, the Latino population at large does, I have seen in my town where they had a march. It was a group of Mexican people. It was about 50 to 75 of them. And they had a march against what Trump was doing at immigration. And again, small, tiny Southern town. And it was weird seeing that, but it looks like there is a change, and there is, especially within the younger generation, there is a change that's happening.
That's some great news. I've also witnessed, and I'm going to be candid, I told you I'm going to touch on some soft space here, where some of our brothers and sisters, African Americans, who in this economic climate are looking for the other to blame for why we are not making economic progress.
Right.
Now, we some Black Republicans in a lot of these cities are the first people saying, hey, ICE should come over here. Hey, ICE should look at this right here. Hey, Donald Trump, come to Chicago and bring your troops to fight crime, because our mayors, Karen Bass, Brandon Johnson, Brother Adams, can show statistically that they've done with the resources that they've had, the crime rates in our cities are going down. And here comes Donald Trump shaking it all up again and forcing us to turn our attention to him and his behavior rather than allowing us to live our lives in freedom.
Right. It's very American to blame the other. It's 100%. It's very American. I mean, we saw it, during the civil rights era. They blamed it on, oh, they're communists. It's always easy in America to blame the other. And of course, there are complex issues behind like immigration and things like that. But in the mind of Donald Trump, in the mind of somebody like that, and honestly, I do think Donald Trump is a racist. In his mind, there's no way that a black mayor can successfully lead a large city. So when he sees Brandon Johnson, when he sees Karen Bass, when he sees Eric Adams, when he sees them leading these large cities, and in most cases, crime going down, he doesn't believe it. There's no way. And it's almost like he lives in a delusion that black people can do no right and black people can't lead or do anything correctly.
It's hard for me to believe, Anthony, that Donald Trump is making all of these decisions. There's a infrastructure under Donald Trump that seems to be a lot more methodical in their attacks on Harvard University, their attacks on the CDC, their attacks on the Department of Education. I even read an article just a week or so ago where the mayor of Atlanta is threatening to no longer receive airport improvement funds because the airport improvement program is now contingent upon not enforcing DEI at Atlanta Hartsfield Airport, an airport owned by the people of the city of Atlanta, meaning black folks under that arrangement wouldn't even be able to have, what's my restaurant in Atlanta? No, I'm talking about the one with the soul food, the Pascal's, man. There's a Pascal's in Atlanta airport that I stop at every time I go through Atlanta airport. They wouldn't even be able to contract or subcontract for services. I find that to be somewhat outrageous, Anthony.
Right. Imagine that you're in a majority black city and everyone around you is black and doing the work and building and helping your city grow. And then Donald Trump comes and says, well, we just don't want you to have a job. And you're in a majority black city and you can't get a job. Imagine that. That's crazy.
It's crazy. And Latinos and Puerto Ricans.
This is deranged thinking, not just by him. It's the people that are under him, because in their mind, there's no job that a black person can do, that a Latino person can do, that they can be successful. That's why Charlie Kirk, when he said, when I see a black pilot, I have to wonder if he's qualified, because in his mind, you could never do enough to be qualified enough in his mind. It's derangement.
I have to shift for just a moment to the unprecedented and illegal military operations that are taking place right now in Latin America by the United States in the name of stopping the flow of drugs into the United States. Anthony, your thoughts?
I think the people that are they're saying that they're bombing these ships, and it's come out that a lot of these people are fishermen, and some of them aren't even from Venezuela. They're from Trinidad, surrounding countries. And I think it's crazy. And it's very much like it's one of these things where they're doing it and they're just saying, take our word that these people were smuggling drugs. And people, press are pushing them like, where's the proof? And they're like, we just know. We just know. And everyone is saying that these are just fishing ships. And I think that this is an intimidation tactic. They're trying to intimidate the people of Venezuela. Now, that's a complicated situation in and of itself, but I think that's part of what it is. And my overall thoughts is, this country is flexing its power against people that really didn't do anything to them in the long run. So it bothers me to see this is where our taxpayer dollars are going, blowing up fishing vessels in the Caribbean Sea.
I am overwhelmed by the cruelty and the brutality of this administration. and there will be generations of repair before we can reestablish trust with Latin America, with the Caribbean, with Mexico, with Africa, with our brothers and sisters. I'd like to explore when we come forward your thoughts on the general rise of global white supremacy. I know that we talk a lot about it with Ernest Krim in this hour. I'd certainly be interested in your perspectives. And when we come forward, at the very end of our show, the last 3 minutes, I always leave our guests with an opportunity for a word of hope, and I can't wait to hear yours. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I joined the military for my kid and his mom. I miss my son a lot. One of the things with the military is tobacco, but that's how a lot of people try to deal with mental issues. Everyone's vaping constantly. After my first hit of a vape, I was hooked like that. Once I got back home from my deployment, I caught my son trying to hit my vape. That was it. I had to quit.
Isaiah started vaping to try to deal with stress and quit because of his son. Learn how he and other Californians are rising above big tobacco at undo.org.
An official message from Medicare.
Medicare plans change from one year to the next. And this year, it's important for you to review your current coverage and compare all your options during Medicare open enrollment. Compare health plans, drug coverage, and costs. See if you can save some money, and don't forget to make sure your drugs are covered. Open enrollment ends December 7th. Visit Medicare.gov or call 1-800-MEDICARE.
Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Established in 2020 during a time of deep racial unrest across our state and country, the Black Freedom Fund was created to make sure that leaders and organizations working to support Black communities and build power have the resources they need to stay in the fight for the long haul. We believe that those closest to the issues impacting our communities know best how to solve them. That's why in just the last 5 years, we've granted more than $45 million to over 200 grassroots organizations across California. That is the largest collective investment in Black organizing in history, and we're just getting started. We are clear-eyed and committed, more now than ever, to our people, our power, and our possibility. Join us in creating a future where Black people harness their full power to shape their lives and realize a just world for all. Learn more at fundblackfreedom.org. That's fundblackfreedom.org. The Black Freedom Fund is proud to sponsor Conversation Live Altadena Rising with James Farr on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hear that? That's the sound of your life. Perfectly imperfect. Beating in rhythm to the world you've created. But every time you drive after drinking, music gets drowned out. Your life sounds pretty great. Don't let a buzz ruin it. Buzz driving is drunk driving. Don't drive buzzed. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest in this hour is Antonio Modesto Milian, who is a TEDx speaker, social media strategist, content creator, historian, influencer. Anthony Modesto Milian is an independent fine art and photojournalist photographer based in upstate of South Carolina. Anthony is an inaugural fellow at the Greenville Center for Creative Arts and a grant recipient with the Chapman Cultural Center. Anthony's work can be seen in Geese Magazine, the Greenville News, and Upstate Forever. Anthony is also a social media content creator with over 400,000 followers across 3 platforms. We can see and understand why that is true. And Anthony has done work for National Geographic, Project Pulso, Wondery, and Eat Louisiana. Anthony, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me.
Are you kidding? You've got me smiling from ear to ear over here. Listen, Anthony, I was wondering if millennials, because I'm always trying to figure out where their heads are, do they see public service in terms of running for office as an option for their time, for their voices in the present? I've seen some examples of where I believe it's happening, but I want to know if it's a broad scale movement based upon the people you communicate with regularly.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I see so many people in my demographic as somebody that's tapped in with politics and, serving my local Democratic Party. There is such a push for millennials to run for office, and millennials are answering the call. They are running for, I'm not talking about large seats like Congress and Senate. I'm talking about local school boards, town councils, city councils. And they are not only running, they're running on their expertise. There's people in my own town that are city planners, that are businessmen, and they are taking their expertise and they're applying it to city governments, and they're making a difference. So yeah, I would say millennials, they definitely are answering the call, and willingly, and with their talent.
Anthony, one of the things that I've kind of observed, and it's in part of the reflection that I've been engaged in personally for the last 6 months of my life, it has been, yes, the millennials have the energy, yes, they have the time, yes, they have the commitment, and they don't like what they see. Gen Z, I think, feels the exact same way. But one of the things that's absent in the space are people who have the historical narrative. When I think about challenges to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, someone might say in South Carolina, my very close and dear friend, and a man whom I have great integrity and respect for, Jim Clyburn, and even my father at the Rainbow Coalition and other organizations, they're saying that they are too old. But I often say, wait a minute, the historical record that they bring to this struggle matters to your energy. You don't know what they know. There has to be some kind of mentorship process. Some of that mentorship process, I can't ask Jim Clyburn to teach a small class of students. He has to do it from the platform that he's on in Congress so that he can educate masses of people from the unique space and being the unique historical figure that that iconic figure that he is. Your thoughts on the historians entering this space, being able to maintain and tell our story against the backdrop of the millennial energy?
Absolutely. When we look at what's happening, with the Voting Rights Act, with affirmative action, what's happened with affirmative action, what's continuously happening with DEI in the historical lens, people like Jim Clyburn wrote the playbook. They might not be able to teach it now at their age, but through their lives, they've written the playbook. It's just a matter of us being willing to look up the information and pick up the information on how to resist this. When it comes down to the things that are happening in America, one thing that I always like to say is that our ancestors taught us how to win. They taught us how to move forward. They taught us how to get through this. And they lived in a lot worse conditions than we did. We have a lot more things visibly that we can lose, but their situation was very much life or death. And while ours isn't yet, and hopefully it doesn't ever get that way, they definitely gave us the blueprint on how to push back against this. So from a historian perspective, it's just a matter of us, of millennials, picking up the documentation, watching the documentaries, and saying, okay, this is how we move forward. This is how we resist this.
I'm thinking in this moment, and I may be having a blur, but 60 blurs happen. I'm thinking Jim Clyburn is the first African American elected from the state of South Carolina since Reconstruction, since in Second Reconstruction, correct?
Wow. Now that you put it that way, I believe you're correct.
I think he's elected in 1992, maybe,
Yeah.
because that district hadn't been drawn in 1984 or 88 when my dad ran. Then you have the decennial census in 1990. Then you have the redrawn map in South Carolina in 1992.
Mhm.
And I think Clyburn's been in Congress since 1992.
Yeah. I mean, now that you say that, I never thought of it in that perspective, but I believe you're right.
And the Robinson versus Calais decision of the arguments made this past Wednesday go at the very nature of the seat itself and whether or not the state of South Carolina, which Jesse Jackson, by the way, insisted in the Democratic Party's rules, be moved out of Super Tuesday and up in the Democratic primary process, Iowa, New Hampshire, and then South Carolina. By the way, it's the state of South Carolina that saves Barack Obama's campaign. It's the state of South Carolina that saves Joe Biden's campaign and hence Kamala Harris's campaign. The turning of the Democratic Party's primary process through South Carolina determines the quality of the Democratic nomination in the Democratic Party, because in large measure, it's the first time that African Americans in a multi-candidate field of Democrats running for office where they finally have their say. And the leadership from 1992 to the present in helping shape who the Democrats are in that critical seat, which could be redrawn if Robinson versus Calais does not go in our direction, has been Jim Clyburn.
100% correct. Jim Clyburn's district is very large, and there has been talks recently because of the discussions that are happening in the Supreme Court on redrawing his district and making it so another Black person, or potentially if there is another person, a Black person that has that district, has a smaller swath or a smaller district. There are people in this state, very powerful and influential people, that already know what they want to do with his district if this goes in their favor.
That's news. That's news on KBLA Talk 1580. The Jim Clyburn seat itself is at stake in the Robinson versus Calais decision. The cascading event of the voting rights are just that extraordinary. Anthony, we have about 2 minutes before we come forward. Your word of hope to this generation, to the people of Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York.
Our ancestors wrote the blueprint on what to do, on how to survive this. And when I say our ancestors, I mean all of our ancestors. They had to survive a lot worse than what we have a lot to lose, but they had to survive a lot worse. And for us, it's our responsibility individually to pick up the knowledge, to learn the knowledge, pick up the books, pick up the resources, and learn how to resist what's happening right now. It's out there. They did it for us before. We have so much technology, so many resources that we can do it today. If the people that are doing it have the resources from their ancestors to do it, we have the resources from ours to do it as well. So I want to leave everyone with hope to know that we can get past this.
I am so grateful for your leadership. I hope you will spend more time with us on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. Anthony, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Look forward to having you again in the future.
Thank you.
Well, there you heard it from Anthony Modesto Milian, state of South Carolina, giving us a report from the ground for what millennials are thinking, what African Americans and Afro Latinos. He is an African Latino, an African Puerto Rican, and he is filling in for Ernest Krim III on our show. I am particularly grateful that he allowed us his historical knowledge of Latin America and the world to share with us at this critical hour just how we're feeling beyond our own neighborhoods. Brother Modesto, I hope you will spend more time with us in the future. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. The federal shutdown enters another week, now the third longest in U.S. history. Democrats want healthcare subsidies. Republicans demand a deal first. Your Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
This is the first time in history that any party has had the audacity to shut down the government over a totally clean, nonpartisan continuing resolution.
The Senate meets today for an 11th attempt to end the impasse. Good Morning America's Robin Roberts has donated a cutting-edge broadcast media center to Southeastern Louisiana University. The 33,000 square foot facility will help journalism students thrive and marks a historic moment for the school. And Cardi B is speaking out against the Trump administration's proposed $186 billion in SNAP cuts, warning it could hurt food pantries during the holidays. She's urging easier access to aid amid rising costs. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Escape the confines of the city for the expansive beauty of the Santa Ynez Valley with a short 2-hour drive up the coast. Let Chumash Casino Resort be your destination getaway. Welcome to freedom. Go to chumashcasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams reminded everybody that they are a legitimate contender in the NFC. They went over to London and delivered a 35-7 beatdown over Jacksonville Sunday morning. 5 touchdown passes for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, 3 to wide receiver Devontae Adams. The Rams are 5-2. They're in the first place tied with San Francisco in the NFC West. The Chargers forgot to bring their defense to SoFi Stadium. They lost to Indianapolis 34-24. The 4-3 Chargers gave up 401 yards in total offense. Colts running back Jonathan Taylor had 3 rushing touchdowns. The Dodgers still don't know who they're going to play in the World Series. Seattle and Toronto will meet up for a decisive Game 7 tonight in the American League Championship Series. Toronto won Game 6 last night 6-2. First pitch tonight at 5 o'clock on Fox Sports. The World Series starts on Friday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Tavis Smiley with a final word here about the upcoming Left Coast Forum on Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. As you know by now, our major keynoters include Professor Richard Wolff and Dr. Cornel West. LA Mayor Karen Bass will be there as well. But listen to some of these plenaries: fighting for Black students and educational equity, resilience under Trumpism, how to stay sane under fascism, the battle for democracy, what's at stake in 2026, healthcare under attack, fighting Trump's cuts, and building patient power from seed to system, building a local food economy in South LA, theater as a force for change, voices from Palestine. The Constitution is not self-reinforcing, racism on the left, building communities of care, federal changes and their impact on healthcare in LA County, Committee for the First Amendment, and more. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. Our very special guest on Moving Mountain Mondays, our co-host, Teresa Hort Owens, will be joining us momentarily. But I thought I'd use this first segment to opine on something the Lord put on my heart this morning: Trump and tariffs, another perspective. I think Trump is deliberately using tariffs and the legitimate economic fears that his tariff wars create, particularly in red rural areas, so that he can blame the economic anxiety that they legitimately feel that he created on the racial and immigrant boogeyman. He creates the fear, then he tells his supporters to blame us, to justify his military occupation. He's using the tariffs not to strengthen the economy, but to divide people. He is picking their pockets. Listen to Lyndon Baines Johnson. I'll tell you what's at the bottom of it all. If you can convince the lowest white man he's better than the best colored man, he won't notice you picking his pocket. Hell, give him somebody to look down on, and he'll empty his pockets for you. That was Lyndon Baines Johnson. He's bankrupting farmers who live and plant seasonally, while domestic and global economy is made up of customers who need something to eat every day. Dr. King said, I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. He also said, why should there be hunger and deprivation in any land, in any city, at any table, when man has the resources and the scientific know-how to provide all mankind with the basic necessities of life? There is no deficit in human resources. The deficit, Dr. King says, is in human will. What kind of leader weaponizes food? I prefer that we negotiate trade deals properly, that Congress, the representatives of the people, participate in a thoughtful process that includes reciprocal trade and takes into account trade imbalances. Tariffs should not be imposed by a mean, vindictive, and nasty sovereign whose intention is to inflict pain on people around the world and even in his own so-called citizenship subjects. What kind of leader posts an AI-generated meme dumping defecation on his citizens, subjects, exercising their First Amendment rights? Using tariffs to stoke racial fears and division is a crime against the Republic. Congress must rein in Donald Trump's tariffs and regain control of its authority and responsibility. He's deliberately creating an economic condition of desperation for all people, all citizens, and he's changing the moral compass of the United States from a welcoming nation to an isolated one. He has no interests in bringing people together. This and that is where our interests lie. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. You're listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. I just had to get that one out this afternoon. I am particularly concerned also with what I heard in the last hour from Anthony Modesto Milian about the Jim Clyburn district. And while I've not given it the complete thought that it deserves, if there is already a discussion, given Jim Clyburn's age of nearly 80 years old, to redraw that district in California, it changes African American leadership in the Democratic primary selection process, because there is not that authoritative voice that is represented by Jim Clyburn, the national leadership that is presently Jim Clyburn's, not only within the Democratic Party, but within the Congress itself. Imagine taking his district, carving it up, giving portions of it to Republicans and potentially more competitive districts. We're in a deep southern state like South Carolina. It is possible that Jim Clyburn could be the only African American ever elected to Congress during Second Reconstruction from the state of South Carolina alone. Imagine that. Not a series of representatives for working class whites and blacks within his congressional district, which is both urban and rural. And he's done a fantastic job of changing the quality of life for citizens in that congressional district. There is no doubt about it. He was the Democratic whip. Access to every appropriations bill to fix all kinds of problems in that congressional district that had never been addressed since the freedmen experienced emancipation in 1863, let alone the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. Yes, other blacks have been elected who were the Lincoln Republicans during First Reconstruction. I believe there was a representative from South Carolina, maybe even a senator from South Carolina. But the future of African American representation in the Congress of the United States from South Carolina is greatly challenged by the idea of the arguments that we heard in the Supreme Court just this past Wednesday. It is almost impossible to imagine a Democratic caucus in the Congress of the United States without the voice of Jim Clyburn. But imagine a Democratic caucus in the Congress without an African American representative from South Carolina at all, in a state where nearly 40% of its people are African American, certainly 35%, large enough to draw the Clyburn congressional district. So what started out in Texas with Donald Trump looking for 5 more votes, and the Robinson-Calais decision, when it comes down at the end of this term, could very well wipe out one of the most significant voices of African-American leadership in the last and present century. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward with Teresa Hord Owens after the break.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code MAJOR25 to get an extra 25 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code MAJOR25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code MAJOR25 for a 25 cents per gallon bonus.
Are you drowning in IRS tax debt?
With Civic Tax Relief, they were able to save me upwards of $80,000 that I would have had to pay had I not reached out to them.
Get ready for a toll-free hotline. Take advantage of new IRS tax forgiveness programs that may protect you from IRS collection agencies.
I owe the IRS $37,000.
They have the power to garnish your wages, put liens on your property, and levy your bank account. Civic Tax Relief can help protect you from the IRS.
Civic Tax Relief basically represented me against the IRS. By the time everything was completed, I didn't owe the IRS anything.
Find out about the Fresh Start program that is now available through Civic Tax Relief. Civic Tax Relief's special tax hotline can help you discover all the relief programs available for free.
I would recommend anyone who has a tax problem to contact Civic Tax Relief.
Just call 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500. Don't wait. Call now. 800-285-3500, 800-285-3500.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to Moving Mountain Mondays, the Faith Not to Fall with Reverend Teresa Hord Owens. Reverend Terry Hord Owens is the General Minister and President of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada, an author and an advocate for church living out its calling. She's the first person of color and the second woman to lead this denomination. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Terry Hord Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being an anti-racist church, being a movement of wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. Madam President, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show and to your show, The Faith Not to Fall.
Hey, it's good to be here. I am in the Caribbean. I'm in Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
And I literally just arrived at the hotel. I'm in the lobby. with my headphones in, but I'm here for a meeting we have sort of a sister part of our church here, about 100 congregations that are a separate entity, but came from us, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. So I'm here every year for their annual assembly, but every 2 years we have a meeting of the leadership between the two churches. So
congratulations, Madam President. You're doing God's work.
Doing God's work. I wish I had more time to enjoy Puerto Rico, but when I tell people I've seen a beach once in 8 years when I've been here, so I need to come at some point for leisure.
Madam President, here on the mainland, an extraordinary event, which in no small measure is part of the culmination of your faith and your work. More than 7 million Americans marched to 2,600 different locations around the nation, protesting the idea of tyranny and authoritarianism. Your initial thoughts about the significance of this movement?
I think the numbers matter. The numbers are significant. The visuals matter. There were all sorts of predictions from the Republicans that there would be, these were terrorists marching, there would be violence, but people were marching. They had signs, they had costumes, they were determined. They were still having fun in the midst, of the struggle. And I was excited to see so many faith leaders really across the country I know who participated and who were there and are becoming more and more vocal about the issues that we face. I really do think that people of faith have to be vocal, visible, and audible.
Madam President, you and Reverend William Barber have been advocating for a mass movement, a poor people's campaign. And while the particular emphasis may not itself have focused on poverty, certainly part of the outgrowth of your faith is a reflection upon what did happen. Blacks and whites and browns and Muslims and Christians and Jews and people standing up to tyranny, standing up. And the only violent thing that I've been able to determine, there may have been an incident or two here or there, but small by comparison to the amount of people who participated, was the President of the United States meme posted at the same time of the march of him flying over the crowds in a F-15 fighter jet, literally, please forgive me for saying this because I'm kind of ashamed to say it, dumping defecation on the crowd. That's a different spirit energy than what I know you've been praying for and we've all been hoping for.
Absolutely. It's a different spirit. It is just one of the key, I don't care what religion you practice, or even if you don't practice a religion, part of our humanity and sharing space has got to be the respect of each of us, our human dignity, and our desire to flourish together on this planet. And we know the history of the United States is such that one of the core freedoms that we have is not only freedom of speech, but freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances, which means we have a right as citizens and people living here to say, we don't like what's going on. We need to hold our elected officials accountable, and to do so in a spirit of nonviolence that really honors that spirit of nonviolence, which is really about honoring the dignity of everyone, whether we agree or not. And that's what I saw on Saturday. And I'm grateful for that, because that allows us as people of faith and others, there's a certain moral high ground that we simply must not yield. We really have to continue. That was the lesson Dr. King taught those young people as they were marching and sitting in and doing all the things that they did, was that this was a moral fight, and we could not fail that moral analysis. We had to be strong in the midst of that.
Madam President, to you, what does it say to you about the president's mentality? I mean, the meme is almost, it is childlike. And I would find great difficulty in even forgiving my own child for something creating something that absurd.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be the leader of the free world.
Yeah. This is something that, an elementary school child would if an eighth grader did it, we might think, that their brains, like the frontal lobes. One of the best piece of news I got when my son was a teenager was the scientific knowledge that says the frontal lobes of the brain that connect decisions with consequence are not formed really until the mid to late 20s. And so that's why, in women, it's just true. That all comes together a little sooner than men, but the kind of stuff that he's talking about, it's not only silly, it's disrespectful. It is, I've heard there are psychiatrists who have come out to say that there's enough public data and enough public video to observe his behavior. He's been named by professionals. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I have heard credentialed, board-certified psychiatrists say that he has malignant narcissism and that he also is showing signs of dementia. The narcissist makes everything is about him. Everything is about him, as opposed to the issues that we face. If you disagree with him, he's going to send troops to your city. He's not trying to be the president of all the people. He's just trying to punish those who disagree with him. And that flies in the face of both our democracy. It flies in the face of any faith tradition that you might practice that talks about loving the divine and loving neighbor. So he's a sick man. That's all we can say.
That part right there, malignant narcissism, and you have to
dementia.
And
dementia.
And you have to see it not just against the backdrop of his reaction to the protest, but every single decision that he has made, whether it's DC or Los Angeles or Chicago or bombing these little skiffs coming out of Venezuela and Colombia and authorizing the Central Intelligence Agency in some covert activities. The news is reporting in Venezuela, apparently they're pursuing some form of regime change. I'm wondering if in your thinking, we are long past the idea of the invocation of the 25th Amendment.
I don't think we're past it. I think what we lack is the moral courage to enact it. As long as the House and the Democrats don't have quite a strong enough majority in the Senate, but in the House, Democrats, as you know, do not control either house. It would require the moral courage. It would require somebody to develop a backbone. It would require somebody to be strong enough to say, this is hurting our country. And it would require several people who have the levers of power on Capitol Hill to say, this is beyond, enough is enough. We need to care more about the health and safety of our country than we do about our own particular political careers or a Project 2025 agenda. For people to fail to do that and to place other objectives ahead of the welfare of the American people invalidates their legitimacy, in my opinion. You don't get to come to me when you have not put the welfare of the country ahead of your particular agenda. You've lost your relevance. You've lost your authority with me.
Madam President, I've got to share with you that I'm so proud in this moment of the mayor of the city of Chicago, Brandon Johnson.
Yes.
He is.
I've been saying the same. I have been telling everybody, Congressman, I am like, yes, the mayor of Chicago is standing firm. He is bringing the fire. And I too am so proud of the way in which he is carrying himself, working together with Governor Pritzker. But I really, really appreciate Mayor Johnson's fire and his backbone. Yeah.
I'm proud of the governor too. I believe when I met him yesterday, it was the first time I've ever met our governor before, but he seemed to suggest we had met on an occasion, but I don't remember that. But I'm particularly proud of him too. This Illinois leadership between the governor and the mayor in Chicago is extraordinary. And I know that they got some inspiration from Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass, who turned when Trump turned the Texas corner, he landed in their lap, and we got some signals on how to do it. Madam President, but I think he did raise something recently that takes it to another level that you and I discussed on your show, which is not inconsistent with our historic movement for social change and social justice. The mayor of the city of Chicago says that while the No Kings rally accomplished exactly what it needs to accomplish, he took it to another level and said we need to look hard as a nation at a general strike.
Yes, I heard that. And I think that is the kind of solidarity and commitment to collective action that really is required. We have a strong labor movement, as you know, in the Chicagoland area. And I think that that could easily be done. I think that the challenge will be when you say a general strike, who is able to carry off that strike with a sufficient cushion, if you will, that allows them to minimize the impact to themselves and their families. But I do think that that kind of collective action makes a huge difference for everybody. And when we can decide that we're going to do something together and not worry about whose idea, whose organization, who came up with it first, or even who's at the mic and who's not at the mic, if we could focus on that kind of solidarity, I think we'll be heard and we'll have an even bigger impact. I saw lots of, footage. There were lots of people who spoke in Chicago, lots of people who spoke at other places, but this wasn't any one person's event, right? It wasn't William Barber's event. It wasn't Jim Wallace's event. It wasn't Jesse Jackson's event. It was the people's event, and the people were out there in numbers, and they held themselves to a high standard of conduct and behavior, and they took care of business. And I think that idea of a general strike will hit people where it hurts. Corporations have been complicit and they have been bending the knee to Trump. And so there are corporate interests, billionaire, almost trillionaires now, who need to feel something. They need to feel the impact of their own collaboration with Trump.
Madam President, I think that's right. We have about 2.5 minutes before we come forward, as you know. I do want to get your take because a lot of things are coming together. 7 million people marched. The mayor of the city of Chicago has called for a general strike. It's now floating in the ether. People are giving it some thought. It's also occurring in the context of a government shutdown. Your thoughts on the government shutdown?
For me, there's but one moral issue. How can you say that you are going to work to take care of the people? First of all, the Republicans have never honored any other commitment they've made. Democrats are standing firm because this will hurt people's health. It will hurt their pocketbooks in terms of extraordinary costs to premiums. When we come forward, maybe I could share a little bit about how my church is kind of preparing for the possibility that people's premiums will go through the roof in terms of a program our pension fund is preparing for our clergy. But I don't know how you sit and say, oh, we'll deal with that later. No, this is too important. People's health care and people's pocketbooks are already hurting. You're holding on, Republicans, for something that fails to meet the smell test.
We still have about 1 minute and 30 seconds. Can you give us some preliminary indications on how you're going to move forward?
Our pension fund, which is the strongest pension fund among all mainline denominations, and we still have even what's called the defined benefit program, which means you get a fixed, a defined amount and not just a 403B. But we are taking some additional monies and setting it aside and allowing 1,000 clergy to apply for $2,500. And if this goes through, the applications will be open November 1. If it doesn't, if the shutdown is pulled back and we fix the healthcare issue, it won't go through. But we're prepared to support 1,000 clergy in case their premiums do go up. With about $2.5 million coming from our pension fund.
That is a real contribution and a real.
Yeah, so they would each get about $2,500 to kind of take care for the short term. It wouldn't be an ongoing kind of thing, but for the next year, we would be able to give that to them. So we see a lot of anxiety among our clergy about that. So
we are certainly grateful for hearing that there is some forethought on what the possibilities could be. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Ward Owens, The Faith Not to Fall. More when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's afternoon drive time with Jesse Jackson Jr. Only on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. Black Memphis, Tennessee Mayor Paul Young says the city's task force could scale back within 30 days. His comments come after initially opposing President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard.
I'm certainly not happy about the National Guard.
Young says he hopes to maintain partnerships with federal agencies and will release detailed reports and bi-weekly updates on arrest and use of force incidents. A new Nashville, Tennessee venue is honoring the legacy and diversity of gospel music. The Museum of Christian and Gospel Music, which opened last week, traces the genre's evolution from traditional hymns to contemporary Christian and gospel rap. And Black Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser visited AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas to gather ideas for Washington's new NFL stadium opening in 2030. She praised features like the retractable roof, massive video board, and standing room areas that elevate the fan experience. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Escape the confines of the city for the expansive beauty of the Santa Ynez Valley with a short 2-hour drive up the coast. Let Chumash Casino Resort be your destination getaway. Welcome to freedom. Go to chumashcasino.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams reminded everybody that they are a legitimate contender in the NFC. They went over to London and delivered a 35-7 beatdown over Jacksonville Sunday morning. 5 touchdown passes for Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, 3 to wide receiver Devontae Adams. The Rams are 5-2. They're in the first place tied with San Francisco in the NFC West. The Chargers forgot to bring their defense to SoFi Stadium. They lost to Indianapolis 34-24. The 4-3 Chargers gave up 401 yards in total offense. Colts running back Jonathan Taylor had 3 rushing touchdowns. The Dodgers still don't know who they're going to play in the World Series. Seattle and Toronto will meet up for a decisive Game 7 tonight in the American League Championship Series. Toronto won Game 6 last night 6-2. First pitch tonight at 5 o'clock on Fox Sports. The World Series starts on Friday. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Donald Trump has all but declared war on California, sending in the National Guard, blocking disaster relief, and cutting funds to our colleges. And now, he and Texas Republicans are trying to rig the next election by stealing congressional seats from black voters in states like Texas.
They want to rig these elections, and they want the power that gerrymandering provides.
Seriously, look it up. But Prop 50 is how we fight back. It gives Californians the power to fight fire with fire and beat Trump at his own game. Prop 50 creates temporary emergency congressional maps that level the playing field and protect the power of black votes. Not just in California, but across the country. Your vote matters, and the whole country is counting on California to lead. So use your vote to protect our power, our history, and our future. Vote yes on Prop 50 by November 4th. Ad paid for by Yes on 50. The Election Rigging Response Act. Governor Newsom's Ballot Measure Committee. Ad committee's top funders. HMP for Prop 50 and Fund for Policy Reform.
Tavis Smiley with a final word here about the upcoming Left Coast Forum on Saturday, October 25th at LA Trade Tech. As you know by now, our major keynoters include Professor Richard Wolff and Dr. Cornel West. LA Mayor Karen Bass will be there as well. But listen to some of these plenaries: fighting for Black students and educational equity, resilience under Trumpism, how to stay sane under fascism, the battle for democracy, what's at stake in 2026, healthcare under attack, fighting Trump's cuts, and building patient power from seed to system, building a local food economy in South LA, theater as a force for change, voices from Palestine. The Constitution is not self-reinforcing, racism on the left, building communities of care, federal changes and their impact on healthcare in LA County, Committee for the First Amendment, and more. The Left Coast Forum is brought to you by the LA Progressive, the Empowerment Congress, Community Coalition, Partnership for Growth LA, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, LA Care Health Plan, United Teachers Los Angeles, Black Progressive Action Coalition, St. John's Community Health, the National Lawyers Guild, the Weingart Foundation, and more. Space is limited, so if I were you, I'd register right now at KBLA1580.com. That's KBLA1580.com. Your voice matters. Your presence matters. We'll see you there.
You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA. That part right there, 1580. Reverend Teresa Terry Hord Owens. Since her election in 2017, Reverend Owens' ministry actively reflects the disciples' priority of being anti-racist church, being a movement for wholeness, welcoming all to the Lord's table as God has welcomed us. In keeping with the disciples' historic commitment to Christian unity, she serves in leadership at the National Council of Churches as the treasurer of the governing board and a member of the World Council of Churches Central Committee. Reverend Owens is a native of Terre Haute, Indiana, and a descendant of one of Indiana's oldest African-American free settlements. She earned her bachelor's degree in government with a minor in Afro-American studies from Harvard University. This is Moving Mountain Mondays. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Good to be with you, Jesse Jackson Jr.
Madam President, let me ask you a question. You broached, what are you saying, Gina? I understand that you have an announcement to make.
Well, no, an announcement. I just put it in the chat. We had a meeting of the governing board of the National Council of Churches last week, celebrating the 75th anniversary, and I am the new vice chair.
Congratulations! Is there a button we can hit?
I will. Yeah,
we don't know our sound effects.
I will serve 2 years, and then after 2 years, I will.
Don't you hit the wrong button?
I'll become the chair after 2 years. So
congratulations!
Pray my strength. That's more than a notion.
All right, now before Gina starts pressing buttons, Gina, don't press any buttons right now. I do have a question. Before we came forward, you broached an idea that the church is already reflecting upon how to help its neighbors. And I don't know if many churches, organizations, institutions, or people are giving much thought to the idea of how do we help our neighbors in this government shutdown? How do we help people that we know need our help? How can we create bonds of service through food pantries or inviting our neighbors over? You may or may not know that they are in struggle, but they certainly are, Madam President.
Yeah, I already have heard stories about congregations doing exactly that. Not only food pantries, gift cards, taking perhaps surplus resources that they may have and creating community funds that may be able to assist people with bill payment and things like that. There is a ministry in DuPage County called Love Christian Clearinghouse. And I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but the very nature of their work is that they are sort of a clearinghouse, literally, of resources that people can go to. My congregation always supported them, but we do know of people creating funds and people using pantries. Many of our ministries are trying to figure out how they can assist. Our regional ministries are looking across their geographic area and trying to pay attention to people in congregations that may be affected, particularly in the Washington, D.C. area. We've got a lot of disciples congregations in the capital area. And so there's a lot of work going on to figure out how we can reallocate some funds. Our church-wide ministries did a lot of work during the pandemic to say, hey, how can we help people? How can we help churches? Everything from deferring payments on churches' loans on their building to providing grants for technology and things like that. So our pension fund is working to support help with clergy, but we also have a Week of Compassion, which is both a disaster and refugee recovery program that in the midst of the shutdown, when a lot of programs are not being funded, we're trying to reach out and work with partners and continue to do what we can so that certain community programs can continue. So that's an important part of it. While we may not be doing everything directly, we do support financially a lot of community programs across the US, Canada, and really around the world that we're trying to step up and make sure those folks are not without support during this time.
Now, are these for federal employees only, these kinds of programs? Obviously for clergy.
No. For people who are whose families are being impacted, right? I mean, we're still in the midst of the impact of what ICE is doing with immigration. So we already have churches and congregations that are doing that work to support people. If it's no more than running to the grocery store for people or doing those kinds of work, doing that kind of work. But people are just stepping up all the way around because shutdown or not, people are hurting. The cost of food is still high. There are already people who have lost their jobs because of some of the cut downs or cutbacks that Trump has authorized. So this is certainly being precipitated, I think, by what's happened to federal employees. But there's such a general issue of people, having a difficult moment. There's just not a good story. There's not a good story to tell about the U.S. economy right now.
I think that's right. I'm hearing it from soybean farmers, from lettuce farmers. I'm hearing that this $20 billion given by the Trump administration to Venezuela to help them, in the meantime, closing markets with his tariffs in the United States, to China, the largest importer of American soybean, and American farmers are not sending a single bean to that marketplace. And now there's talk about bailing out farmers. And just before you came on, I opined on the idea that I think Trump is actually using the tariffs not to improve the economy. He's using the tariffs to exacerbate the relationship between the red rural areas and urban areas. And those people who are struggling are now, if you will, looking for the other to blame, because Donald Trump is egging them on to say that the reason you're having the problems that you're having isn't because of tariffs. It's because of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I might add, we do have a news flash. Mayor Brandon Johnson has filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration to protect Chicago's diversity programs. And so bravo, Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Bravo.
Madam President, if you think other mayors around the country should file similar actions like the mayor of Chicago.
Collective solidarity. I think so. I think even though we've been frustrated by the courts and their failure perhaps to give us the answers that we want in certain situations, I think we can't lay off. We have to continue to be persistent and doing what's right and at least trying to lean into the law of the land. There's such disregard for the rule of law that we really have to lean into that. And the more mayors and governors who lean into that, the more impact I think we'll have. There's only so much that they can push back on. This is what happened in the first Reconstruction, right? They tried to generate ill will from white working class people against the freedmen, saying they will take what you have. And this is the same kind of dynamic that we're seeing today.
This is absolutely out of the end of first Reconstruction playbook. Mm-hmm. It's occurring in our time, in our space, at the end of second Reconstruction. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. This is Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Horde Owens on the Faith Not to Fall. She is our regular Monday contributor that inspires us through the week. For all of our programming, she sets the stage, and we're so grateful that she is here. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr., listening to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. More with Reverend Terry Horde Owens when we come forward.
While you're stuck in traffic, we can at least bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
Attention, have you racked up $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you barely getting by making minimum payments? With credit card debt reaching all-time highs, National Debt Relief is notifying consumers about significant debt relief options currently being made available to help those with overwhelming credit card debt. These options may reduce a large portion of credit card debt for those who qualify. You don't need to declare bankruptcy or take out a consolidation loan, and you may only have to pay back a fraction of what you owe, even if you have bad credit. National Debt Relief has already reduced the credit card debt for more than 550,000 consumers, so don't wait. If you owe $10,000, $20,000, or even $100,000 in credit card debt, you can now take advantage of this financial debt relief as the cost of living continues to skyrocket. To check what debt reduction you may qualify for, call 800-237-8585. That's 800-237-8585. Again, that's 800-237-8585.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Is your loved one at the hospital or in a nursing home? Have they developed bed sores, fallen, or worse? These are things your family members should be protected from. Bed sores, falls, and dehydration are almost always the result of negligent care. If this has happened to your loved one, call Zoran at Basic Law Group at 800-215-1234 or visit basiclawgroup.com. The consultation is free, and if they don't win, you don't pay. That's 800-215-1234.
Now back to more of Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
Jackson Jr. Welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. It's Moving Mountain Mondays with Reverend Teresa Hord Owen. She's the General Minister and President of the Disciples of Christ Church. Reverend Owens, welcome forward to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Thank you. It's always so good to be with you.
Madam President, just 7 hours ago, Jim Clyburn posted this on social media with a lot of Republicans out there saying that the Affordable Care Act is a scam. Let me just take a moment to explain what they mean by that. They mean insurance companies should be allowed to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. They mean Americans who don't get employer-sponsored health insurance should be on their own. They mean students and young people who don't yet have health coverage should be kicked off of their parents' plans. They mean large employers should be free not to provide health insurance to their employees. Essentially, they mean that tens of millions of Americans should have no access to health insurance. Our health insurance and healthcare system is broken. Democrats want to fix it. Republicans want to break it further. What say you, Madam President?
Amen and amen to that. American healthcare system is broken. It has moved from being in the days of the initial Blue Cross Blue Shield plans. I spent 8-some years working for the Blue Cross Blue Shield system and had to get certain certifications in healthcare insurance. It's about mitigating risk for actuaries, but the initial plans were created as nonprofits. So when Anthem, the group that I work for, started to acquire other blue plans, Anthem started in Indiana, then acquired Kentucky, then Southern Ohio, Connecticut, and on and on. I lived through about 3 or 4 of those mergers. They became a for-profit entity, and that shifted the whole understanding, really, of what healthcare is about. The idea that people are. I used to get bonuses at Anthem, and I laugh now and say I repent that that was done on the backs of people's premiums. So we've just gotten way out of line, and in a corporate environment where people are making exponentially more at the top than people are making at the bottom. I mean, I look at the healthcare bills for even our church, each one of we're so decentralized, each one of our ministries kind of has to do it themselves because it's too expensive now for us to be what they call self-funded, which means you have to hold a certain amount in reserve to pay for your claims. That became too expensive for our church, and we had to give up that kind of healthcare plan. But it's ridiculous that one has to be rich, that you have so much debt that people are unable to pay it. They have to go into bankruptcy. People make calculations about whether they can go to the doctor on a regular basis. This is human flourishing. This is basic human right. It's not, healthcare is a right. It's not a privilege. And when you're going to tell me that I've got to pay, my plan right now has like a $3,500 deductible. Yes, that's crazy. That's crazy that you've got to pay $4,000 before any of your health care takes effect. It's just crazy.
I in this moment, and of course, your word of hope is in front of us. In this moment, if I were the Democratic leader and I had to shut down the government, I would demand a vote. Maybe not on a clean resolution or clean CR. But if I were holding out and shutting down the U.S. government, I would demand a vote on the constitutional right to health care of equal high quality. Now, we need 2/3 of the Congress in order to pass such a right, and then send it to the states, and then let the people in the states decide.
Yes.
And the second part of the amendment, and the Congress of the United States shall have the power to implement this article by appropriate legislation. In other words, rather than holding out for an amendment to a CR to fund the government, I'd be holding out for a fundamental right because, as you know, we believe in our faith and the spiritual space that healthcare is our right. But no such right exists unless it's in the Constitution.
Yeah.
So unless you end slavery in the Constitution,
the
right not to be in slavery is just an open question.
Yeah.
unless it's specifically placed in the Constitution.
Yeah.
What we've learned from this government. And what we've also learned is if our citizenship rights are not in the Constitution, then we don't have any such rights unless it's specifically spelled out in the Constitution. And women have fought long and hard for the fundamental right to vote. And they can say the right to vote is their right. It ain't their right until it's in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Then it becomes your right. It's hard for women to imagine a world without the 19th Amendment. And so I'm Top Gun on, I've been called some of everything, but let me tell you, there is no more progressive idea than to hand to future generations the right to say, you have an MRI, I can't have one. We have the same problem. I live in this rural area. You live in an urban area. You live in Martha's Vineyard. I live over here in the Delta of Mississippi. We deserve ERA, and I need to go to my ERA, an equal healthcare amendment of equal high quality, so that in the Delta of Mississippi,
yes,
I can have the same ERA that you get in Martha's Vineyard or at Mayo Clinic or at Cook County or at Cleveland Clinic. That's where I am on that, Madam.
And I would stand with you. I would be in the streets canvassing for that.
Make Congress say no. Make Congress say no. The American people are not entitled to this constitutional right. Or make every representative in Congress say, you know what? I did vote for it. I'm sending it to each state legislature, and you all handle it, downstate, and let the people in that state say, we don't want health care. We'd rather, I'm not discussing socialism.
Correct.
I'm not discussing even, one of my favorite plans, the single payer plan. I'm discussing an American right. If you put it in the Constitution, it's not communist, it's not socialist, it's not Marxist, it's not democratic socialist, it's American. It's American in the Constitution.
Absolutely. I'm so with you on this because it's just basic human dignity. The idea that we would not want people to have access to health care. And we got to fight against, and I think you would get the grassroots from top to bottom, regardless of social class and socioeconomic status, to support that because everybody is paying way too much for healthcare at this point because it's become too much of a for-profit entity. And the idea that we even live in a country where somebody can decide just unilaterally, like RFK Jr. can just decide no more vaccines of this, or that a president can say no more research for this condition or that condition, or I don't like your DEI program, so I'm going to take away your university's research funds. This is, and as I one of the things I love about the finger of God is that you make this argument that, there was always this assumption that we would be dealing with people of character, of high moral character. We certain things, certain principles that you never thought you'd have to articulate with the kind of precision that we now have to articulate them in the court. So I'd be with you. This is just about human and flourishing. It's not about everybody being rich. It's about everybody having what they need. The richest country in the world, we have enough. We ought to be able to make this happen.
Madam President, the same energy to shut the government down, the same energy.
Same energy.
For a little provision to a congressional resolution, a CR or a continuing resolution, the same energy could be used for this purpose. Madam President, we have 1 minute for your word of hope.
The word of hope, I think, is that people, as I'm sure you're familiar with Viktor Frankl and his Man's Search for Meaning. One of the things I had read that in graduate school, college. You mentioned a few weeks ago, so I actually went back and reread that. And one of the things he talks about that's so powerful is that it is our attitude and our decision about how we handle the negative things that come our way. Not that suffering is necessary, but when suffering is present, our hope must lie in the fact that we choose to fight. We choose to work for a just outcome. And we've just got to make some choices. We choose to fight. We choose to do the right things. And I think together, our collective strength and our collective solidarity will enable us to prevail.
Madam President, please find some time for yourself in Puerto Rico. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. See you next week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.